go. Um, Welcome to the podcast, Jamie. I don't know what time this is. Is it maybe third time, second
Second time
time,
for us.
second official? But I think you were on some of the NAFED ones.
Yes, yes, sir. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
So
yeah,
thanks
that's right.
for.
Because at the beginning of NAFED, I did some of that, but then this is our second formal podcast.
Yeah, yeah. That was in 2020. So it's almost. I think it'll probably be released when the last one was released 2 years ago.
Oh,
Um, and we were going over the state of the restaurant industry and all that. And that one actually got a lot of traction. I think it got some good talking points out there because the pandemic was still pretty fresh, you
it was
know.
real fresh. We were all just getting into it, trying to figure out how to pivot and what we were going to do and how to get. And I know our distributors were struggling with how to get to their customers and that sort of
Yep.
stuff. And now we've come a couple of years past that. We're coming out of the pandemic, and there's a whole new set of challenges
Yes. Oh yeah.
that are different for our industry. So it's apropos. It's time to get together and discuss pre-engineered fire suppression. It's also good timing. Next year at the NAFEDS, I'm going to be giving a presentation on the Friday about this subject. So this is going to sort of help me lean into that presentation and
Awesome.
get it built. And honestly, our pre-engineered suppression industry is in this little niche between sprinklers and alarms, and they don't get a lot of media attention like this. They don't
Right.
have podcasts to go listen to or resources to go check out that are just specific to pre-engineered and portables, right?
Right.
So anytime we can do this kind of thing, I think it gives them something to make them think about, right? Hopefully it helps them get better at their job and find other resources. If we can spread a little knowledge, I think it's good for our little industry.
Well, yeah, I agree with that, and it kind of brings up a thought I had. I was at a one of your Amerex distributors in New England recently, and big in the sprinkler end. It had been for years. Got in, bought a smaller extinguisher business, and he, I kind of told him like to broaden your business a little bit more. Get into some of the, they're in Rhode Island, so they're into a lot of the marine aspect, right? Get
Oh,
into
sure.
some of the FM 200 and the yachts and whatever. Now he's into paint booth suppression and using your is it IP?
IS system. All right. Yeah.
IS, and he didn't even know. And he had this whole flow with IS. And is it Derek that's doing it with
Yeah.
you
Derek
guys?
Bryant's our technical
Yeah.
services person. Yes.
So Derek's helping him. He's actually embedding it in an inspector. It was like this really cool avenue that I didn't even know about, and kind of using our technology with what you guys are doing, and I don't know. It's really cool to see them expanding their horizons into
it's
pre-engineered.
it's nice that the conglomeration in our industry with the big nationals buying everybody up, it presents a lot of new opportunity because in each of those new offices where it used to just be a sprinkler house, they're trying to add fire extinguishers, pre-engineered systems, alarms,
Mhm.
security, access control, all of that stuff. And if you can get an anchor in some of those accounts, it can reap benefits for you. You can
Yeah.
do pretty well. And they're all trying to be everything to everyone.
Right.
So as they go through that endeavor and find out new ways, like sprinkler guys doing paint booths with dry chem instead of water, just like that, right?
Right. Right.
When they start learning how to do those things, the whole industry gets better.
Yeah.
Honestly, and then those companies or those offices can supply a more comprehensive fire protection solution across the board. Because the world's not just sprinklers and alarms, right? Our little niche is quite important to that fire protection plan in each building.
Well, that was the whole thing with it. Is like they wanted a bit of sprinklers. They wanted, hey, can you put a sprinkler system in this paint booth or whatever?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'll put an industrial system in there,
Well,
right?
in many cases, you want to add sprinklers to a fire alarm. You might have to put a new underground in. You might need
Yeah,
a fire pump. You flat out might not have enough water at all on that site
right.
to do it. So having an option to go with dry chem that doesn't require a water supply or, frankly, water capture.
Yes.
Right, you have to retain all that water that's sprayed into the paint environment into a dam or a coffer or into a tank somehow, and that is a big extra cost. So going with dry chemical in a paint booth can really present a good option for the end user and the fire equipment distributor.
No, that's interesting to say that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And
So
not to
what?
mention in that space, there's a lot more mobile painting operations,
Oh,
limited finishing workstations, things that it would be almost impossible to put sprinklers in,
yes,
right? Because
yes,
they're on casters or something like that.
right.
So with a standalone dry chem system, you can kind of mount it on there and then have it connected either wirelessly to different shutdowns or notifications, but gives you a few more options.
Are there any other areas like in industries or I guess things to protect, right? That you've seen on the industrial side, like paint booths. Is there any industries popping up that
Oh yeah,
you have?
yeah. It's our the funny new NFPA standard, NFPA 420. Uh,
I'm on the standard.
yeah, the the protection of extraction booths
Yeah.
is still kind of the Wild West out there right now. We get a lot of requests, I know our competition does, to protect extraction booths with dry chemical and standard detection. That's not really the best application.
Right.
When you're extracting concentrate from marijuana, usually you're using a flammable gas of some
Yep.
kinds, right?
Butane.
And that
Yep.
becomes an explosion hazard,
Yep.
right? And you need detection that can deal with that. You need suppression that can deliver the agent fast enough as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
Otherwise, you have an explosion, building falls down, and then the fire system goes poof.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You got nothing.
So that doesn't do anybody any good. So I would say to the industry, make sure you're using the right fire system for extraction booths. Make sure it covers flammable gases. Make sure you can detect the fire fast enough, and make sure you can deliver agent fast enough.
Right. Right.
Don't go with I have access to industrial dry chem, so I'll sell that.
Right.
Well, it's probably not the best application there. So
So I guess yeah, obviously detection's a big thing, but is there anything to put out that I mean sprinklers are going to be delayed because of just water delivery time and all that. And
uh,
so if industrials, I guess what is there other than detection?
So I think it's delivery time, right? So you
Okay.
can build the system so that you can use a clean gas tank and a very short amount of piping, so that as soon as you do get detection, valve opens and it's delivering product right now or agent right now, versus where you've got maybe a dry chem system that has to deliver sand through pipe and several elbows and nozzles to get there. It's just going to take longer, right?
Yeah.
So I think the best way to say this is each manufacturer has their own solution and
Okay.
their own engineering to do that. But it's important to note that your detection needs to be fast and your suppression needs to be just as fast in order to tackle that hazard correctly. Industrial dry chem with fusible link detection is just simply not the right answer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I haven't been to my first standard committee yet or a technical meeting yet, but I'm interested to see the different manufacturers on there and just what's out there because I haven't heard of anything that's going to solve that yet. I see a lot of sprinkler designers racking their brains over different protection and occupancy classes and all that, but nothing on the extraction side, which is probably the biggest hazard of the whole industry.
Yeah,
So,
I think we're going to evolve into something that's like what covers powder coating booths.
oh,
The Fike explosion suppression system that's used for that kind of application, and there are other ones on the market, but
interesting.
I think it's going to evolve into something like that because again, we're dealing with air coming in, air extracting out, flammable gases within that space. You're going to need dampers to close it off. You're going to need fast detection. You're going to need fast suppression,
Yep.
all of that. And that kind of leans into that explosion suppression space. So this is new to our whole industry. And I
Right.
think we're just at the beginning of that path. And that's why I pointed out the way I do. I'm not looking for a sale there. I'm looking for the industry to protect these hazards correctly.
Yep.
Don't under protect them with the wrong product.
Right.
Right? And again, each manufacturer has their own solutions and their own way of doing that. So I will let their distributors bid those appropriately, but we should be doing it right. We
Yeah.
shouldn't be putting a system in there just because we have it and we can make a sale.
Yeah. No, I agree. You just won't, short term thinking versus solution thinking.
Yeah,
So
yeah. On the industrial side of the business, that's really the new and emerging hazards that we're seeing quite a bit of.
mhm.
I think that we're also seeing some ambiguity around what you can protect with the pneumatic detection and delivery systems too, right? They're sort of on the periphery there of UL or FM listed pre-engineered systems that meet UL 1254, uh, and they fill a space, right? Sometimes on vehicles, sometimes in buildings. So that's a little bit of an emerging space as well in industrial dry chem. But for the most part, in fire protection, that's a smaller market, right? So
Yeah,
it stays fairly static and fairly consistent over time. Whereas the restaurant market is much more volatile and pre-engineer, right? We ebb and flow with the restaurant industry. We have to adjust with the restaurant industry as they make major changes in how they do business. It affects fire suppression,
yep,
and we sort of have to roll with that industry quite a bit more and more changes. Obviously, it's a bigger volume too. Everybody's got
yep,
to eat. Not everybody's got to paint.
yes, yeah,
So,
yeah.
uh,
Overall, how is it like in the last 2 years? Is there anything out there? Or what I guess what have you been hearing on? You see the restaurants that have closed, but is there? I guess what is the restaurant industry and suppression looking like?
yeah, it's been evolving for sure. So, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a sort of weeding out of the weakness in the herd, right? The restaurants that couldn't adapt and couldn't pivot and couldn't find out how to deliver, they faded away. So we lost a good volume of restaurants in the United States. But then that industry is made up of some very hardy people, right?
Yes.
There was a lot of pivoting. There was a lot of reinventing themselves and developing new ways of doing business, a lot more delivery, right? So that feeds into the industrial sort of cloud ghost kitchen scenario
Yep.
where we're seeing those all over the country popping up and still being used on a regular basis. Um, we see that. We also see the industry trying to set up new restaurants less expensively, which is a
Wow.
natural sort of progression, right?
Oh,
So instead of looking at a full kitchen hood system, right, with gas lines, electric, and big appliances that cost 30 grand a piece, right, they look at, well, maybe I can go with a ventless solution, right? Where
right.
I don't have to put a vent from my kitchen hood 6 floors up and out the side of the building. So they're looking at ventless solutions where they can just roll in an appliance that has a recirculating
Yep.
duct
Yep.
that has a fire system in it, but it's a UL 710B fire system where the fire system, the vent hood, and the appliance are all tied together in one listing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so in that case, instead of suppressing a fire after a 2 minute pre-burn and then keeping it out for 20 minutes, like UL tells you have to do with UL 300, you suppress the fire and there becomes a fireball that comes out underneath the hood. And that fireball has to be retracted or sucked back into the hood in less than 1 second.
What?
Yeah, 1 second. They're timing it.
Uh,
And so it's a much different test, and it's really designed around the appliance, the ventilation in that recirculating duct, and the fire system together. So you have to have your detection temperature low enough to get the
yep.
fire when it's in a small enough stage, right? You have to have a strong enough fan to suck that fireball back underneath the hood and into the ventilation where there is suppression, right?
Yep.
Do that. So it's a much different test, but the end users can buy a standalone roll away product.
That's crazy. I got to see one of these tests.
So
Hopefully they have a vid. Do you have a video of one of those tests? I'd love to kind of post
we do
that.
have some videos
Oh, that
in-house. We could probably
that
put something together.
yeah, like that's a interesting thing where you have to suck the fireball back in within 1 second.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
everybody. I'm used to UL 300. Again, I'm not too deep into the pre-engineered, but
yeah.
obviously everybody knows UL 300. But I didn't know about that other standard. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So when you walk into a bar and you see a little box that's a deep fat fryer on the bar or behind the
Yeah,
bar,
yeah.
that's a UL 710B application. That's got a fire in
Oh,
the back
it's
of it.
got a suppression system in there. I never knew
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're seeing quite a bit more of that in the market. The other thing we're seeing is a lot of electric appliances, a lot more electric appliances than gas in emerging
Hmm.
new restaurants and new lineups. And it's because of power consumption and how they cook things. They can cook things faster. They can cook them with less
Gotcha.
emissions, less natural gas cost, less installation cost, right? So they can deliver food, frankly, at a lower cost to their customers more consistently. A good example of this is Outback Steakhouse is removing most of their broilers for steaks, and they're putting in platen clamshell griddles, just like you find in a McDonald's.
No way.
Yeah. So because they can cook a steak from both sides,
Yep.
they can do it quickly, they can get it into a box, and they can get it delivered to your house quickly, and you get a good,
Wow.
consistent quality steak because it's cooked from both sides
Yeah.
quickly. Get it in, get it out. Uh,
Interesting.
so a lot of changes like that in the industry, a lot more electrical appliances, a lot more low emissions appliances. So with an electric appliance, you can actually do a test with UL. And if your emissions from cooking off of that appliance are low enough, you don't need fire suppression at all.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. So the food equipment manufacturers are really exploring those avenues more and more all the time. And the best example of that is Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. There are, I believe, and I might have this number off just a little bit, but I believe that there are 38 range hood fire systems in Climate Pledge Arena.
Hmm.
34 of them are UL 710B recirculating duct systems,
Yep.
and only 4 of them are UL 300 standard sort of fire suppression in a hood in a kitchen.
Interesting.
Uh, so all of their stations, if you go into any of their commissary kitchens or any of their kitchens up on the concourse, you won't see a regular hood and duct.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, it's crazy that pushed that innovation, and probably a little bit due to the slowdown, right? And having to reinvent. And what is does NFPA 17A cover
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
NFPA 17A does cover any wet chemical fire systems, and the wet
Okay.
chemical systems, or the systems that are in UL 710B applications are wet chemical. So they do fall
Gotcha.
under 17A. And then there's a recirculating section in 96, I believe, as well, that addresses that.
Interesting.
The other thing that's happening with those ventless hood solutions is it's a lot less expensive in a city like New York, right? Where if you've got let's say a cafe on the sidewalk, right? But it's in an older brick building that's several
Hmm.
stories, trying to get duct from a hood outside of the building in an acceptable manner is really expensive, right? And it's arduous sometimes. Sometimes there's no place to spray that fan because if you do, you're going to spray it right on the law firm next
Oh
door,
yeah. Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
So I was up at the Food Service Consultant International show up in Montreal early
Oh wow.
this year, one of the first trade shows we've been able to get back into.
Nice.
And there was a big discussion within that group. And these are people that all they do is design commercial kitchens. That's it. That's their entire job.
Right.
Um, and there was a big discussion there about in New York City, the vast majority of new appliances going in have a recirculating duct instead of a standard duct.
Huh.
Uh, because again, in that cafe on the sidewalk in a big brick older building, you can
Yeah.
slide that into a kitchen without having
Sure.
to put a duct in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're seeing that a lot more, and it's a different way of doing fire suppression because it's very very pre-engineered. And we,
Yeah.
us fire equipment manufacturers, we don't sell the repair parts directly to our distributors. The manufacturer that makes the appliance sells them through. Excuse me, I apologize. Sells them through a place called Parts Town that all of the food equipment manufacturers sell their repair parts through.
Interesting.
So, and the pricing's a little aggressive, I don't mind saying.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's part
So
it's
the
part
fire
what would
equipment,
you call it? Parts Depot or
it's called Parts Town.
Hartstown. All right.
Yeah,
Sounds like it's pretty
partstown.com.
aggressive.
Yeah, and so all the parts are sold through them, but that's been increasing more and more, and has to do with cost a lot, but it also has to do with like LEED buildings. Like Climate Pledge Arena has zero natural gas in it, and it's a net neutral building. So,
Wow,
so that's why they did the ventless cooking in that particular space.
interesting.
When you remove natural gas, ventless cooking becomes very attractive.
Yeah, I could see that. Back to your New York City comment, I know they rolled out a regulation to inspect and like certify duct duct cleaning. Um, I think it's duct cleaning, I believe.
Yeah.
So
Did they
that
do that?
probably drove up the cost as well. That was like 2 years ago they did that, and that may drove up the cost and kind of forced that as well if they're looking at it, you know.
It certainly would have exposed the cost to more
Right.
people so that everybody went, whoa, look how
Yeah.
expensive that is. But let me say, I back that move by New York City. They should be having a closer look at each exhaust duct, how often it's cleaned, what quality is it cleaned to, is that done the correct way?
Yep.
If you have a duct work that's got several bends in it going through several stories of a building, it's a danger. If it's
Oh
not
yeah.
handled correctly, it is absolutely a danger. So
Right.
I'm all for good enforcement. In fact, I would say it's one of the things that I've seen in the pandemic that has gotten more rigorous. I think that the fire marshals got a lot of time at home to think about how to enforce their fire codes.
Yep.
And I think that I'm seeing a lot of jurisdictions that did not, well, before the pandemic, they didn't comprehensively test systems, right? They sort of just did it to the minimal, right? Now, those jurisdictions, we're seeing them have much more rigorous plan review, right? Much more rigorous trip testing, right? Much more rigorous reporting when it comes to service work, right?
Right.
And back to them.
Yep.
Um, a lot more regulation around food trucks than there used.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
a lot more regulation around food trucks than there used to be. We've got fire marshals having food trucks come in to their jurisdiction and they're not acceptable. So they're telling them simply, you can't do business here until you come to this standard. And they're showing them the NFPA guidelines
Wow.
and the NFPA standards and saying, you need to come to this standard or you can't do business here.
That's nuts. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know um I forgot where we were going, that food trucks before that. I forgot where we're going. You were talking.
Oh, well, there's certainly
Oh,
more enforcement. It also, there's more enforcement in licensing and certification as well.
yes.
Which,
Yeah. All right. I got it. So, you know, I've been we've been working a little bit with Bryce or in compliance engine a little bit, and you know, predominantly before it was sprinkler fire alarm, but now they're getting into the suppression side, especially specifically kitchen suppression.
yeah.
So all these jurisdictions are adding that on as another line item where inspections and deficiencies need to be uploaded, which kind of creates that, you know, regulatory body, and it's a good thing, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, I'm all for good enforcement. And I don't mean overwrought enforcement. I mean
Right.
good, solid, accurate enforcement,
Yep.
right? And the jurisdictions that do that well, you can go into their jurisdiction and look at systems and look at alarms and look at buildings, and you can tell that those that AHJ has done their job in that market. Right,
Yeah.
in that jurisdiction. So I'm a big fan of that. We like to do as much fire marshal training as we can, practically, as much as they want to get from us. And usually we do quite a bit of that and are happy to do that, by the way. State fire marshal associations, state distributor associations, national associations, we at Amerex, and I think our whole industry want to do that, right?
Yes.
So if anybody's listening and wants that or needs that, reach out. We'll be happy to help educate. The better education we have in this industry, the better we will all be. The turnover also presented a ton of turnover, a
Yeah.
ton of turnover within our fire equipment distributors, within us manufacturers, we at UL, right?
Really.
All over, right? So a lot of people that have been in the industry long-standing for decades have retired. And
Yes.
that knowledge base has to be replaced, and it needs to bubble up from within, right?
Yep.
And that creates a lot of room and opportunity in our industry.
It is.
It
Yeah. And
does.
I think there was a stat, NFPA and Matt Klaus posted, you may have saw it the other day, but I think they polled, and I could get this wrong, so don't quote me on it. I think they polled, everybody in the last, I don't know, 12 to 18 months that were retiring. So they polled those people at NFPA, and they asked them, I'm like, what is your what is your thought on your knowledge being passed along after you retire? And 25% of them said, yes, it's passed along. But the other 75 said a lot of that knowledge is being lost, right? So
Yeah,
there's that big gap there. And it's interesting they did that study, and I'm glad I've actually mentioned it a few times in the last week or so. So it's interesting to see who's going to fill that gap
yeah.
and how long it takes for just that knowledge base, right?
Well, it's very important, and our industry's on this path to do this uh, through places like FPC and Ed O'Brien and the FED Learning Center and the ICC certifications, NFPA 96, adding those license and certification passages all over their document, NFPA
Mhm.
17A and 17 as well, right? That whole effort is really helping with enforcement and requiring a high level of knowledge for technicians, but we're still struggling to get those technicians up to speed fast enough so that they can work for their employer, produce some money for their employer without sacrificing quality,
Yep.
right, of service and quality of installation. And I think our entire industry is struggling with that a little bit, right? But what I would say is those entities I mentioned before are doing a really good job of upping the industry's game or
Yep.
providing options for these fire equipment distributors so that they can take advantage of these options, get their fleet of technicians really up to a high level. And then as they lose technicians, which is inevitable these days,
Hmm.
right, that you can replace somebody, you can build a feeder system in there. It Gets Equipment is another one that offers ICC training for fire extinguisher certification. There's another one there. But there are plenty of places that are doing it, and it's increasing.
Yep.
Uh, and I think that's one of the most important things we have right now because our industry's growing. We've got all the conglomeration. The big companies are getting bigger, right? And they've got these big staffs of new employees, and you know what? They're trying to get them trained up too. They're trying to get
Sure.
them up to speed so that they can produce some dollars for them every day. That's probably our biggest challenge in our industry is getting new people in, trained adequately or more than adequately, and then out on the road doing the proper work
Right.
fast enough. So
Yeah.
uh, I think you could go to every fire equipment distributor and they tell you that that's a challenge of theirs.
Oh yeah, it's I put a pain point challenge slide together the other day, and it's labor shortage and just knowledge base is number one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There's
I
other
just
there's other rising costs and um uh supply issues and all that. That'll settle out, but
yeah.
labor's the tough piece.
You know what the supply chain issues done to the market that I've seen? Let me just say this. I think each manufacturer has had their own individual challenges, and I think
Mhm.
each manufacturer has done an admirable job of getting product on the market
Yes.
and getting it to market as fast as they could. It's a being a fire equipment manufacturer these days is not for the faint of heart.
No. Nope.
Yeah. But having said that, I think the result in the market because of it is that the big end users or any end users don't want to be sole sourced,
Right.
right? They are looking for diversification everywhere.
Yep.
You might not be the primary supplier into a big end user, but if you're the secondary supplier, that could be just as good, right?
Yep.
It's really a reshuffling of the deck in a lot of cases because these end users are, hey, this particular entity couldn't help me open a store, but this one could. So now instead of giving 100% of my business over here, I'm going to diversify. I'm going to give half of it over here. So I have options for myself.
Yeah, and
Uh,
probably the same as from the distributor's point of view. I mean, sprinkler's more of an open market, and then you got suppressions probably next, and then alarm. But alarm's having to deal with it too, is they
that's
can't get
right.
parts. So, all
Yeah.
right, if your primary is one of the one of the big boys, like if do you have a secondary, and are you
Yeah.
big enough for them to get parts? So, I think you have to diversify as a you know,
Yeah. Listen, a distributor should honestly these days wants as much diversification as they can, right up to the time where they pull the permit.
yeah,
When they pull that permit, they're locked in, right? At that point, the supplier they chosen better support them or they're in trouble, right? But right up to the point where they pull that permit, right? They want as much options as they can, or want as many options as they can, so that they don't get stuck behind the eight ball or get in a position where they can't get a store open for one of their clients.
Right.
Uh, and it's a challenge for everyone. And I would just simply say that I got a lot of respect for the business prowess and the tenacity of our small fire equipment distributors that install restaurants. I mean, they are some tenacious people
Oh yeah.
on all sides, and I got a lot of respect for that. And hopefully, the market and the supply chain is going to come back to support them a little more than it has been in the last couple of years. So,
Yeah, and I
it's
think it'll improve as inflation kind of, you know.
yeah, it's going to solve itself a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Inflation's going to has been spiking quite a bit. We're going to have a little bit of a dip in recession. The
Yep.
question is how will that affect the food and restaurant market?
Yeah.
And my guess is that it'll push right through. Um, some of the low hanging businesses that maybe aren't as well planned as ever, we might lose those. But I don't see the big nationals slowing down at all. I don't see most big hotel chains slowing down.
Yep.
I think a lot of that's just going to push right through because, as we started with, everybody's got to eat.
Everybody's got to eat. Yeah, the costs are going up, but everything else is going up. So
Yeah,
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 I heard an article the other day about just different restaurateurs pivoting just some of their menu. A lot of it's labor, but it's the cost of the food too.
that's right.
So
Yeah,
they're moving to more of a plant-based option, like cutting out certain proteins, right? And it was
yeah.
just interesting to hear that they're
I
adjusting the menu a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I watched a story this morning on this very thing, and restaurant owner said, "I place my weekly order for food. What they have available, right, is what I take, and then I build my weekly menu off of that."
Wow.
Right? Because he doesn't want to build his menu, keep it consistent, and then not be able to get all the pieces or all the product he needs to build those menu items.
Right.
Right. So instead, he's just been proactive and go, okay, each week I'll order what they have, and then I'll build my menu for the week off of that.
That's funny.
And kind of a proactive way to do it, but that inventiveness is what I'm talking about. These people have some tenacity to them. They see a roadblock and they just find a way around. So, and you know what? It's survival, right? I mean, if they don't, their restaurant won't survive.
Right.
So I got a lot of respect for restaurant owners. I think it's a hard gig. I think
Yeah.
it's a passionate business that they get in for their passion, and then they find out that how difficult it is. And the ones who make it through, oh, they're good business people for sure.
Yeah, they are. They are, and it's a lifestyle business too.
Uh, so,
Uh,
interesting. We're sort of talking about things that happened during the pandemic and different changes in the market. Internationally, one of the things that's interesting is there's a lot more players on the market now. Uh, a lot more restaurant fire suppression systems are getting approved and out on the market. There's a company called Mobiac that now has UL listings. There's Rotorex has got a system. La Habit's got a system. There's a place called Hood Saver
wow.
that's out there, and they're all sort of on an international basis pushing into different markets. Some of them are pushing into the US and trying to sell systems
Right.
that have UL 300 listings.
Right.
But that's also been a pretty decent change in the last few years. I mean, these companies are all coming out of the woodwork, and frankly making a lot more options on the market, but also confusing the market a little bit because they're tested to different standards. Some of these systems are LPCB listed. Some of them are listed to BSI. There's a new standard in Europe called EN 17446. Like one system's listed to that. China has a new standard, not a new standard, but the CCC standard, where if you want to do business in China, you have to go there and do fire testing,
Wow.
right? So,
Wow.
so that kind of the international market is changing and evolving quite a bit right now, quite a
Well,
bit.
I'm interested to see, U.S. is the U.S. is pretty, but is there more regulations coming out within other countries with the systems? And that's what, it's interesting that there's more manufacturers coming on, even though there's got to be more demand in the other countries, right?
Yeah. Well, and some
For
of it is regulation change, like Brexit. Right?
Yep.
It made the EU stand on their own. They used a lot of British standards prior to that, right?
Right.
And now that they're standing on their own, they're developing EN standards where maybe they didn't have one before, or maybe where they were using an alternate standard previously, right? So I think political shifts like that are also causing changes, right?
Interesting.
Changes in the market. And then places like China, who want to control their own destiny and are
Yep.
big enough to do so,
Right.
are looking at UL and looking at the United States and go, why do we need them? We can do this ourselves,
Right.
right?
Right.
And they're protectionist, right? They want to have people come and test in their facilities and spend their money in China and then build their product in China, right?
Yep.
So from a business standpoint, can we really blame them for that? For
Right.
that?
Yeah, exactly. And oh, I guess we've done the same, right?
Yeah,
You gotta
yeah,
test it over here.
yeah. So and that leads me into, there's these different standards all over the world. Well, one thing that never stops in kitchen suppression are new appliances. Uh, food equipment manufacturers are out there every day inventing new appliances to cook food in different new inventive ways.
Yep.
And when they produce grease-laden vapors, they got to be protected. But what happens is these manufacturers go out and they make these products, they sell them to their customers, but they don't ever do any fire testing, right?
Mm,
So they put it on the market, and then they find out that they can't sell it until there's a fire
fire
coverage for it,
suppression. Wow.
right? So then they come to the manufacturers like us or Ansel or somebody and say, hey, can you test our our appliance to UL 300 standards?
Right.
And when they get the quote for that, they choke on it and then and then decide whether or not that's something they really want to pay for or not. But
Right.
that's happening quite a bit. There's like a salamander broiler out there used in steakhouses that doesn't have sides on it anymore. So the traditional coverages that are out in the market for salamander broilers don't really fit that appliance. But that
Wow.
appliance just shows up in a restaurant, and now the fire marshal has to make a determination about what he's going to do with it, right? So those kind of things happen. Also, UL has been evolving during all of this. They put a change into the UL 300 standard back in, I believe, 2016 that required a worst case scenario testing for appliances that might have an obstruction.
Hmm.
And that's changing the way that a lot of appliances are tested. Whereas before, if there wasn't a specific test for an appliance, NFPA said each manufacturer would use their recommendations on how to cover that appliance. But now UL is looking at that and going, hey, you know what? We put this worst case scenario clause in UL 300 and get it approved, which it is. And now we can say, okay, we can have this appliance that you used to use manufacturer's recommendations for, and we can apply our worst case scenario testing to it. And now we
Right.
do have a test, and you do have to pay us to do it.
Oh, wow.
Right. So that's a little bit of an evolution. And those worst case scenario tests can be hard,
Oh, yeah.
right? And they can be difficult to suppress, and they can create coverages for fire suppression systems that are expensive. And you can imagine end users aren't very happy with that.
No. No.
So there's a push-pull going on there in the market, trying to, the end users are like, we want less fire suppression. We think our appliances are safe. We think our processes are safe. We think our buildings are safe. So we need less of that catastrophic fire suppression. And UL and the manufacturers are on the other side of that argument saying, yeah, but you have minimum wage employees, you have a lot of
Yep.
turnover, you're going to get failures, there will be losses, right?
Right.
And that discussion never stops. It never stops in the market. All the fire equipment manufacturers, the hood OEMs, and then the appliance manufacturers all have to work through that problem every day on new appliances and new cooking concepts.
Oh, yeah. That's obviously it's one of the biggest industries
Yeah,
is
yeah.
food, right?
So it can definitely throw off a project too. So I mean, a
Sure.
food equipment manufacturer builds this awesome new appliance that has a ton of benefits for their end users, and then before they launch it, they have to, what do you mean? I got to spend 100 grand on getting something approved so it can protect it if it catches on fire.
Right. 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 You think they
So
would know about it at this point, but maybe there's a lot of just new manufacturers too, right? So,
yeah, yeah. Well, and again, enforcement's getting better.
yes.
So because enforcement's getting better and more comprehensive, a lot of times that's what's driving it, right? It drives they can't open a store for one particular reason because a fire marshal says this appliance doesn't have a UL coverage or something of that nature. And then it drives that end user backwards, right? To come all the way back to the manufacturer of the appliance and the fire system and the hood to find out how to solve that problem for that one store, but then to make sure it never happens again.
Huh,
Yeah.
that's
Uh,
crazy.
yeah, so that certainly is happening a lot in the market these days, and to a benefit, if I'm honest. I think that diversification in the market, multiple players doing fire testing for these end users, I think it helps the market and sort of move a little quicker, right?
Hmm.
But we as fire equipment manufacturers and UL and fire equipment distributors, we better service this market correctly. We better do it right. We better be timely. There's a ton of money here. And if
Yes.
we don't service them appropriately, they will find a way around us.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. They'll find a way. I mean,
yeah.
um, hey, I might have asked you this. I forgot when I asked you. What is in kitchen suppression? Is electric detection? I haven't heard anything on it. Is it just like being punted because the restaurant industry is so rough? Is there any movement there?
I think there are two different parts of the restaurant industry. Sort of think of it like the big end users, right? The
Yeah,
big chain stores that everybody's heard of, all
right,
of the fast food joints, the big steakhouses, there's that end of the market, right?
right.
Then you have sort of the mom and pop or standalone restaurant market, right?
Mhm.
Um, Electric detection is being driven by the big end user market and the
Yep.
hood manufacturer market. All right.
Okay.
Um, and then the last one would be building integration,
Yep.
the building integrators, right? So you have an end user that has global restaurants all over the world, and they want to be able to know what fire system is protecting their store, what is the status of that fire system, right, in their store and or all their stores,
Right.
right? And the only way to do that is to have an electric system that can talk,
Yes.
right, with through some sort of protocol,
Right.
right, back to a building integration
Right.
system, right. We are rapidly, I would say rapidly, we're moving from a space where a normally open, normally closed signal is fine
Yep.
to a place where you're going to need a protocol to and maybe some data recording,
Yep.
right? To record hood temperatures, right? To record events, to record all of that. And I think so. It's more about the electric detection and control than it
Yes.
is the electric detection.
Oh, okay. That makes
Yeah.
sense. More in the
Now,
communication piece of it.
yeah. Now, what electric detection does provide, right, that fusible link detection never will, is the ability to go with rate of rise.
Yep.
Right, so you can have a much more aggressive detector. You can do that. You can have a lot better response time
Yep.
off of a thermal electric detector than you can from a fusible links that has to heat up to 360 degrees. Then it has to heat up all that metal to 360 degrees before it
Hmm.
separates, right?
Right.
So you get better response time, and so the system goes off when you want it to instead of 30 seconds or a minute after that.
Right.
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 Yeah, yeah. So there's real benefit in detection speed and versatility, meaning if you have linear heat detection, you can protect the first inch of a hood all the way to the last inch of a hood with
Right.
one detector,
Right. Right.
right? Whereas if you're using fusible links, you're going to have to put one of those brackets every 2 feet,
Yep.
presenting another thing to catch grease.
Yeah, and I guess it's, maintenance on it. You're not changing the links out, right? You're just
Yeah,
cleaning the wire off.
yeah, yeah. Now there are other considerations there. Usually there's a trade-off with our system. They're selling a battery
Oh, okay.
instead of fusible links. I'm not sure with Ansell's red system, but I'm sure there's a trade-off there somehow.
Sure.
And generally speaking, from a fire equipment distributor standpoint, they don't want to lose that fusible link revenue.
No.
So providing them with another way to recapture that, something they like for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think of the battery.
Yeah.
That's
But
big.
the other thing is think about building integration. If you have an electric system and then you have sort of a canopy hood up on the wall, right? Now you could probably put robots underneath your hood, right? You have a fire system that could trigger the stop of the robot if the temperature goes up over a certain temperature, right? Or if there's a triggering of the fire system and actuation of the fire system. It can facilitate some of that too, because it covers the hood more comprehensively. They can raise that hood up a little farther, put a robot underneath it to just grab a patty, stick it on the griddle, take it off the griddle, put it on a bun.
Does the robot have a face, or is it just like a?
It's an arm, just like you'd see in a manufacturing plant. When I was up at FCSI, the Food Service Consultant International show in Montreal, there was a big discussion about robots.
Really?
Yeah, there's in San Francisco, there's a full company that a barista company that makes coffee stands, and there's no employees. You walk up, touch an iPad, put in your order. The robot makes your latte or your mocha or whatever it is you're getting and hands it to you. Right.
That's
And there's no
crazy.
people involved at all. It's all electronic transactions on an iPad. And so there's also a place that's coming around that's pretty innovative. You show up to this truck and you place your order for your pizza on the iPad, and then inside the truck, it will assemble and bake your pizza, and it'll spit it out at the end.
That's
Right?
wild.
Again, no people involved. It's all robots.
That's nuts.
Yeah, we are headed in that direction.
Like
Right?
the
Automated
Jetsons.
ordering, app ordering. I mean, every drive-through you go to now, they ask you if you place your order on the app. Right?
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
yeah, all of that automation is coming, and it's all being driven because of labor shortages and labor prices.
Yep.
But more
Yep.
labor shortages than labor prices.
Yeah, yeah, the prices I think can be dealt with. Just there's nobody to do it, right? So you either have to
Yeah,
shut down or automate. And
yeah, yeah, and they're all looking at it one way or another, right?
that's crazy.
But it's all on that big end user end of the market. The mom and pop or sort of standalone restaurant, one family owns this business or two or three, that market stays pretty stagnant. It's
Yep.
very cost based. It's survival of the fittest. Get open quick, get your food sold, right? All of that, and it stays really sort of fairly consistent in how they do business. Most of the changes come from that leading edge, the bigger companies that
Yep.
have bigger market share. They've got research and development budgets, that kind of thing.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
um, so uh,
Wow.
yeah, it's an interesting time to be in the restaurant fire suppression business, or just in the fire suppression business altogether. I enjoy it a lot, honestly.
Yeah, that Montreal conference sounds pretty fun. Like it'd be just fun to walk the show, not even being in, just to see all the innovation with how things are
Well,
being cooked.
it's a bunch of engineers and designers that have a passion about food and how it's prepared and how it's made, and to sit and listen to them talk about the inner workings of a kitchen. I mean, these guys could sit down and talk about the 5,000 different things you can make in a combi oven for like 12 hours. So it's one of the big discussions was those sous vide egg bites at Starbucks,
Yeah.
right? It's one of the things that's sort of threatening our industry a little bit, in that they can make those in a production kitchen,
Yep.
right? Cooking them in water, not needing any fire suppression or ventilation or anything for that,
Yeah.
right? Produce thousands and thousands of them, deliver them to their stores, and there's just as consistent as any Egg McMuffin you've ever bought.
I didn't know they were cooking them sous
Sous
vide,
vide.
sous vide, sous vide.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't
yeah,
know they were doing that.
yeah. There's a lot of that. So think about it. Starbucks competes with McDonald's on a regular basis in the breakfast space,
Oh yeah,
and,
totally.
and there's not one kitchen hood in one Starbucks anywhere.
I never noticed that. You're right. It's
Yeah,
only you got extinguishers there and a fire alarm or sprinkler system if it's
yeah.
a fire alarm.
They are making everything in production kitchens, delivering it to their stores, and then heating it up in one way or another, steamers, microwaves, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Heating them up and then delivering them, and they're doing it in a consistent enough way that the quality is there, right? And you don't feel like you're sacrificing by ordering a sous vide egg bite over an egg McMuffin.
Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering when they do the barista bot next.
Yeah, well, you can look that up online. It's on YouTube. They're in operation in San Francisco.
In Starbucks?
No, no,
Oh, oh.
the one I described earlier, the barista company.
Yeah, funny enough, my one of my good friends, he has one in his kitchen where, you just put in whatever you want and you got it within a few minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. But you think about it, low emissions appliances, ventless appliances, electric appliances, right? Engineered food, right? Cost saving measures by restaurants. They're all targeting getting rid of fire suppression. They're all
Yeah.
targeting a cost that they don't like or understand. And if they can find a way to build a restaurant without involving us, they will. So again, we need to be good vendors, good responsible vendors to these companies,
Right.
and show them that there's a real value in the fire suppression they're buying from us,
Yep.
and that we're working with them for good quality solutions so
Yep.
that we maintain our industry for a long time.
Yeah, no.
These threats are real, and accountants that take care of these P&Ls for all these restaurants, they manage
Yeah.
every penny.
Yeah. 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 Especially at the national ones, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Well,
uh,
good stuff, Jamie. Thanks for popping on, giving an update. I'm excited to see the stuff at NAFED next year. Kind of
yeah, yeah,
um,
I'll be talking to technicians as I do in companies across the country, and this is sort of my starter set for that presentation at NAFED. What I really like to do, because I haven't been in the field for a minute now, right? So the
yeah,
longer the longer I haven't been in the field, the
right.
more I realize what I don't know. Uh,
Yes.
so I have a network of guys that I rely on to go get information, things that are happening out there in the market that I may not see.
Yep.
And I would say to your listeners, if you've got, statuses, what's happening or things you're seeing in the market that are different, reach out. I'd be happy to talk to you. I'd be happy to work with you. You can find me on the Amerex website. I'm Jamie Chuck Fire on virtually all the social medias.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So happy to answer questions and talk to people if there's
Little. You've been on a few times, so I'm not. Everybody knows who you are and everything. In your background there, what you got? What's your favorite or most eclectic, item?
Well, it's actually a collection of helmets. So if you look over
Oh,
my right shoulder there, right,
yeah.
the bottom helmet is my fire helmet from when I was a shipboard firefighter on the USS Jewett.
Oh,
The
wow.
helmet above that was my father's fire helmet when he was a firefighter for District 4 in Washington State here for
Wow.
most of his life. And the helmet above that is a hockey goalie helmet that
Oh,
was
yeah.
my daughter's.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
uh, and so those are kind of my three favorite things, and that's my dad's flag from
Oh, that's
service
great.
in the military
That's awesome.
above me. And then over there on the shelf, there I've got a lot of things, but a lot of commemorative Amerex fire extinguishers up there,
Yep.
an old soda acid, and my collection of horseshoe men right there.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I got that center one, the first one, when I was 5. My uncle decided he was going to teach me to weld when I was 5, and so we built that, him and I, in his barn, and then I've got the other ones around that. So,
I can't imagine teaching a 5-year-old to weld, but
well, listen, I don't think I did very good, but by the
whatever.
time I stopped going to Uncle Lee's farm in the summers, I could weld by now. So,
That's funny. Well, cool. Thanks for popping on here. Obviously, you found out where you can find you, Jamie,
yeah,
and yeah, looking forward to obviously NAFED next year, and um, yeah, please throw us some lines on just different topics. Reach out to
absolutely.
Jamie and Amerex, and I appreciate what you've done for the industry and kind of just some innovative items that Amerex has been a really good partner of ours, and trying to think outside the box to progress an industry that's kind of been stagnant, right?
We really like to be very good stewards of the industry. We think of ourselves as a company that likes to be on the leading edge of both protecting the industry from a fire code standpoint and different issues there, and also a leadership standpoint where we can have thought leadership like this, throw out ideas, throw out thoughts about what we're seeing in the market, present presentations at industry association meetings to sort of give that feedback to the industry. We really like being in that position in the market and want to continue doing that.
Yep.
So anybody that can, help us, give us information and work with us, we'd love to do it. So
Yeah.
thank you for the platform. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it. And by the way, Inspect Points are great. I mean, you guys are pushing in, doing a lot of stuff, and doing it in a way that's nice. You're supporting the industry associations,
Yep.
helping them through problems like you did in California with the ADA forms, right?
Hmm.
Just helping them figure out what they need to comply with some of that stuff. So again, I think it's good companies doing good things, being good stewards of the industry. I think it's
Yeah,
important.
you gotta look forward because it's not about today or tomorrow. It's about, what's a year from now, what's a couple years from now, so you're ready for it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we protect a lot of lives around this country, and also this industry provides a lot of livelihoods for a lot of families.
yes. Yes.
And it's a good industry to be in. We're going to find out just how recession resistant we are here in the next few years, right? But the last time we did that in
But
2008, 2010, our industry fared pretty well. So
it swings to the service side, which is, you have the systems out there, you have to service them. So
yeah,
yes, there might not be new ones out there for a little bit, but and honestly, the pandemic was a dip, right?
yeah,
So we got through the pandemic perfectly fine, and a lot of that was recession resistant or pandemic resistant because fire protection is essential. It's essential
yeah.
business.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's a good industry to be in. I'm
yeah,
certainly proud to be in it and want to do anything I can to help further the industry for sure. That's the listen. I like selling stuff and I like kitchen fire suppression, but I really like the fire business, and I really like to do what I can to elevate it and make it better.
yeah. No.
So,
Well, I appreciate it again, and we'll chat soon.
all right, take care of
All right.
yourself. Thanks for the
Thanks,
platform. You
Jamie.
take care of yourself. Bye.